NRA TV with Bill Whittle.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hot Mike Show here on NRA TV, live from Los Angeles. I'm Bill Whittle. Hot Mike got an $800 gift certificate from Neiman Marcus, and he's gone off to the mall to buy one shoe. He's going to try and get the other shoe, I suppose, when he gets his check, which has been a little delayed, frankly, since to his chronic absence, which some of you may have noticed, but we expect to have him back tomorrow. Today, our topic is going to be anti-American chic on the left. Not just the run-of-the-mill America's bad, the rest of the world is good, always take the other side on everything things. I'm talking about the whole idea of how among progressives, especially on the elitist progressives, that a fundamental anti-Americanism, a fundamental anti-patriotism is just good style. It's just what's done. You don't want to go to a real fancy party in Hollywood or in New York someplace and be seen as one of those knuckle-dragging rubes that loves his country, because that would be unbelievably base of you and very, very bad manners. So that's the topic for today. We got a great guest. We'll talk about him in just a minute. Now, kind of to tee this thing off, our friend Rosie O'Donnell, who played Betty Rubble in the Flintstones, actually played probably two Betty Rubbles, really, if you think about how the cartoon was drawn. Rosie O'Donnell is back, and she's telling her fans, whatever there are left of them, that they need to go see this new game where you push Donald Trump off a cliff again. So there's the Donald Trump on a cliff, and apparently you can give him a push and he falls off the cliff. Yep, there he goes. Doink, 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 and keep hitting that right arrow. And yeah, he's getting close. Watch out now. Watch out, Mr. President, be careful. Where's the Secret Service and all this? Da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay. So, Rosie, if that's how you're going to deal with it for the next 4 to 8 years, who am I to judge? These kind of things are trivial and silly, and they don't particularly bother me. It's not anything like Kathy Griffin holding up the severed head or the, Trump assassination porn we saw in New York City. But things are bad out there in terms of people who love America, and it's getting worse in a lot of ways. First of all, as far as young people go, most young people today, a majority, slight majority, favor socialism over capitalism. More young students in colleges today favor socialism over capitalism. And the reason that they favor socialism over capitalism is because they live in a capitalist society and have read about a socialist society. If they lived in a socialist society, they would be voting with their lives on rafts or going over the Berlin Wall or whatever was necessary. So that's not a good trend. Why do you think that so many young people are so anti-American these days? Well, just saw a study that said that American students, many of them, if not most of them, believe that America invented slavery. There was no slavery before America. America invented slavery, and actually slavery ended with the Civil War. That's what they're taught. They're taught things like this ridiculous charge about how white settlers basically used biological warfare against the Indians by giving them blankets infected with smallpox. And this base of this story was a smallpox epidemic in 1839. And what's interesting about this was that germ theory didn't really become established until 1880, 1890, Louis Pasteur, end of the 1800s. John Snow's work on cholera, tracking down cholera with this idea of germ theory, that didn't happen until 1849. So 10 years before we even had a theory of germs, most Americans believe that the American government used germ warfare against the Indians in order to carry on the genocide. And we can go on and on and on and on and on. And we will, but we won't do it alone, because we're going to bring in a guest of mine, a friend of mine who I've known for, quite a while now, 6-7 years. I first met Nick Adams at a party up in the hills of Burbank, and he was having a little get-together to help him out, because Nick was one of those terrific Americans. I've known many of them. Nick is an American who just happened by sheer chance to have been born overseas. And when I met Nick back, was it Nick 7-8 years ago, something now, I guess. Nick was touring the world as an Australian citizen, touring the world, telling the world how awesome America was. This is in the middle of the Iraq War and all of the George Bush hatred and all that. So it was actually quite a while ago. I am proud to say, and you can tell from the smiling face and the flag in the background here, that our friend Nick Adams got his American citizenship. He is now, and this is my favorite part about this country, without any exaggeration, I mean it, Nick Adams is now as American as somebody whose family came over on the Mayflower. There isn't a better American in the world than Nick Adams. It's one thing to go out and defend your country. It's another thing to go out and defend a country that you think you belong to. So, Nick, it's great to see you. How are you, buddy?
Bill, I'm really well. Thank you so much for that sterling introduction, one that can only be given by someone like you. You really set the bar for patriotism, and I'm happy that I'm doing my part to make sure that Americans understand just how lucky they are, and that the moment that they're born in the United States of America, that they really have won the lottery of life, and that it's something that they need to preserve at all cost, and they need to be aware of those people and those ideas that are simply antithetical to the American values that make it such a special place.
Nick, you know, it's a Mutual Admiration Society here, but what is it, do you think, that's the fundamental difference between us and the left? Because when I call you a great patriot, it makes you proud. When you call me a great patriot, it makes me proud, almost makes me want to cry, especially when I hear it from soldiers and things like that. It's almost unbelievable, almost too much for me to deal with. And yet, if you were to talk to leftist professors, or if you were to talk to Hollywood celebrities or somebody working in the news media in New York City, and you said you're a great American, they would take it as an insult, wouldn't they? Why?
Yeah, they would. Look, America is special, Bill, because America is not just a country. It's an idea, but it's a conservative idea. America really is a conservative oasis in the world's socialistic desert. It's the only society in the world that's an individualist society, that's not a collectivist society. It's the most optimistic place. It's the most patriotic place. It's the most religious place. And all of those kinds of cultural influences have come to be the enemy of the left. And therefore, they see American success, they see the American value system as really proving that they're wrong. And America is the one last great holdout to socialism right around the world. And if we look at America and we look at Europe, America's complex, but American exceptionalism is pretty simple. It's individualism, not collectivism. It's patriotism, not relativism. It's God, not government. Faith, not secularism. It's e pluribus unum, not radical multiculturalism. It's equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. It's about being bold, not being bland. These are the things that have really differentiated the United States of America from every other country on earth. And yet those proponents and advocates of political correctness and general leftiness want to make sure that every single one of those points of differentiation gets eliminated. And they really have set America on this European trajectory, which we have seen real time. I mean, if you go over to the old nations of Europe now, they're moribund, they're boring, they're vanilla, they're pedestrian, they're turning churches into
terrified
nightclubs.
And they're disappearing. All those things, yeah. They're turning churches into nightclubs, exactly. Turning churches into mosques as well. Nick, you know, you were kind enough to credit me with something. Back in 2010, I did a video. It's on my site at billwhittle.com under the Firewall series called American Exceptionalism. It was a part 7 of a series I did called What We Believe. Now, this data is from 2010, but in this video, I made the point that America is exceptional, provably exceptional, and that you could measure it in 4 ways: militarily, culturally, scientifically, and economically. So let's just go over those just as a way to kind of get a triangle on the anti-Americanism of today. Militarily, the United States ended World War II with, I think it was 27 aircraft carriers. We had nuclear weapons. We had fleets of B-29 bombers. Could have delivered them anywhere in the world, put the entire world under our boot. That's what we basically fought against during World War II. And instead, this horrible, evil country decided to chop up those bombers to make Coke cans and and scrapped the battleships and the aircraft carriers, and we came home. And we did the same thing in the Gulf War too. They said everything's all about oil, the war for oil, oil, oil. In 1990, 91, we were sitting on the oil fields in Kuwait. We put out the fires and we came back home. There is no evidence for this American militarism that they claim is so oppressive, Nick, but that's a big part of their anti-American story, isn't it?
It is. You see, the military might of the United States of America for a leftist is profoundly unfair because it's unequal. I mean, for them, they think that everyone should be the same, have the same amount of military power. And when I was growing up in Australia, and I don't know if it's changed, I know that the previous president and his administration did a lot to weaken the United States military. But as far as I know, and perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but even to this day, even right now, on the 19th of July 2017, the United States military is more powerful than the rest of the world's militaries combined. That is to say that if the rest of the world's countries joined forces against the United States would still win.
Yeah, and my understanding that the U.S. Air Force, the biggest air force in the world, and I think the second biggest air force in the world is the U.S. Navy, and I think the U.S. Marine Corps something like the third or the fourth. Hey, you know, it's interesting you say that, Nick, because Great Britain, at the height of its powers for the 200 years or so, when Britannia really ruled the waves, it was national policy in Great Britain, and it was sacred national policy in Great Britain, that they would spend whatever they needed to spend so that the Royal Navy was more powerful than the next two European powers combined. That was an absolute ironclad rule for them, and it lasted right through World War I, and by the time World War II came along, they let it go. But that is what you do when you think your civilization's worth protecting, right? You spend money on it, and you make it a priority.
Absolutely. It should always be a priority. Unfortunately, though, the left have really attacked that, and anybody that is kind of supporting that kind of thing is considered a warmonger and a predator and an oppressor and a villain and all of those things, and that's really unfortunate. The most stunning shift in the global mind, I think, in the last 60 years, Bill, has been this movement towards seeing America as evil, seeing America as a warmonger and a villain and a predator and an oppressor. And the rest of the world's collectivist societies have kind of joined forces and all see America as a common enemy. So it's really America standing all alone. And I think that Americans should be very, very conscious of that, and they should be making sure that their military is absolutely the number one, head and shoulders above the rest.
I have friends who have friends in the Pentagon at high levels, and they say that since Donald Trump was elected, there's a spring in the step there that wasn't there for the last 8 years. And by the way, this just has to be said, not for you, Nick, because I know you know this, but for those socialists of you out there and those who might have kids who are being influenced by all this. I think it was Bowling for Columbine, Michael Moore did a montage of all the wars since World War II and shows American B-52s dropping bombs and all the rest of it, and all the places that the United States has been engaged in since World War II. And the only little detail that he left out of that was that every single one of those wars that we got ourselves into were started by either socialists or Islamicists, right? Korea was the communist invasion of South Korea. Vietnam was the communist invasion of South Vietnam. They invaded Hungary. They invaded Czechoslovakia. The Soviets invaded Poland. The Soviets invaded Afghanistan. The Soviets put puppet governments in Cuba. They put puppet governments in Nicaragua. Those bastards started these, all of them, and we went out there to fight for Americans and to fight for other people's freedoms, and we're basically condemned as warmongers. When, as I said at the beginning, we could, if we really were the people the left thinks that we are, we put our flag anywhere we want to.
Bill, people should just really think about what the world might look like without the United States of America. North Korea would invade South Korea. Taiwan would be overrun by China. War, maybe nuclear, would break out in the Middle East with Israel standing to be destroyed. Islamic terrorists would act with complete impunity. Tyrants in North Africa would run around even more mercilessly than what they already do. Cataclysmic natural disasters would have nobody there on site recovering and doing the things that need to be done. Individual liberty would gradually diminish and ultimately become extinct. Russia would attempt attempt to rebuild this empire. These are very, very real possibilities in a world where America is absent or has retreated so much that her influence is not feared.
Yeah, we saw that for the last 8 years, Nick, and these leftists think that if you remove power from the world, if you remove American power from the world, then there won't be anybody who's powerful in the world. That's not how it works. You remove good power from the world, it'll be replaced by bad power. Let's talk about economics for a second in terms of patriotism and the anti-Americanism that we run into. These figures from 2010, they've certainly degraded somewhat since then, but they're still pretty much true. America's about 5% of the population of the world. We do 26% of the world's total economic output. That has been traditionally because Washington traditionally is not a big part of American life. France is Paris. Russia is Moscow. London is Great Britain. But Washington was a relatively small, out-of-the-way place, and cities like New York were finance. Chicago was commodities. Los Angeles was, entertainment. Seattle was aerospace, and so on. And Washington was a relatively small part of this nation's complexion. That's changing, and that's going to hurt us and continue to hurt us.
Yeah, that's right. Look, the founding fathers, I believe, of the United States were the most prescient men, Bill, to have ever walked this earth, because they understood that the way to unleashing human ingenuity, the way to unlocking human creativity, was to make sure that men and women were as unencumbered as possible by the need for government approvals and red tape. They also wanted to see an economically nimble place, and that's what America has always been. It continues to be the center of the economic spider web for the world. If something happens in America, the rest of the web kind of starts to flutter. And so really America is at the epicenter of everything. And it really goes back, I mean, you can draw the parallels with the military. What is good for America is good for the world. This is why anti-Americanism makes no sense at all unless you're anti-civilization and anti-humanity, because if we've seen anything, it is that when America is strong, the world is strong. When America is weak, the world is a weak and dangerous place, economically, militarily, culturally, and scientifically, the next two topics that we're about to get to.
Thank you. Scientifically is an interesting one, folks. The data that I used last was between 1996 and 2006, but during that time, the second highest country in terms of scientific citations in research papers was Great Britain with 18 million. The United States had 75 million citations. The United States had more scientific citations. These are like essentially their individual discoveries. The United States had more scientific discoveries than the next 6 countries combined. Now, that was in America. That was a result of what once was the best public school system in the world, and now is nothing more than an indoctrination center for left-wing crybabies. And that scientific advantage, we went to the moon 50 years ago with slide rules. That's how well educated we were. The education system in this country is being undermined by leftism, and we are now talking about things like feminist quantum theory and things of this nature. This scientific lead that drives the economic lead is the one I'm most worried about, Nick, because the foundations are so rotten. Yeah,
look, and your concern is definitely warranted, Bill. Look, and just adding to what you were saying, America mapped the human genome more than a generation ago. Americans are always derided as being fat and stupid and lazy and everything else by Europeans and others that want to sit on their pretentious high horse and call names, when in fact every time the Olympics comes around, America always comes first. Every time that the list of scientific citations are published, America's always up there, and there's always a gap. There is always a very distinct gap between America and the rest of the world, and I don't see that changing. You know, even despite all of the undeniable and indisputable problems in the public school system and elsewhere that certainly make us really worried about this, even if we have a look now at all of the things that have come out in the last 10 years, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and all that stuff, none of that is coming out of Shanghai or Beijing. It's all coming out of Silicon Valley. So, I mean, it's clear it's still there.
And SpaceX, a bunch of teenagers in T-shirts at SpaceX are launching rockets into orbit, and then they're bringing them back and landing them on a dime. So yeah, there's still definitely hope for that. And finally, and we got to get going because we're almost out of time. This idea of the cultural dominance of America, the fourth area of American exceptionalism. You know, America was the storyteller of the world. My fiancée is from Russia. She grew up on American movies. Everybody in the world grew up on American movies. And the reason they grew up on American movies was because, first of all, America is made up from people from all around the world. It's a country of immigrants. But mostly, it was because the American story was the idea of something that everybody can get behind. It was about an individual struggling against powerful odds, and through courage and hard work and ingenuity, they succeed and they get their reward. And this appeals to everybody. That's the appeal of the American idea, this rebelliousness, this independence. And that's being attacked by the Hollywood left and the news media left and all the rest of these college professors. The entire idea of individual achievement is perhaps under attack more than anything in our colleges today.
Yeah, that's right. Bill, you know, there are kids running around all over the world, in Asia, in Australia, in Europe, that are running around with baseball caps on backwards. Now, that didn't emanate in their own country. That is something that they observed and they saw through some kind of American influence. There are kids using iPhones all over the world. Again, that's something that's really come about from American influence. I grew up on American movies. I grew up on American sitcoms. It's something that really had a very profound impact, I think, on why I love America so much. I always love the fact that in Hollywood movies, action movies, that happens to be the genre that I like, you really see, I think, that you've got one guy who's usually up against the bad guys, and on top of that, even the government are the bad guys. He can't trust the police. He can't trust the FBI. So it's one guy taking on the world. What could be more American than that?
Yeah, High Noon to me is the definitive American movie because it's the definitive American idea. Very quickly, Nick, you know, the left accuses conservatives of being xenophobic, which is not true at all. We just like some law and order. There is, in fact, though, Nick, a mental disorder that's the opposite of xenophobia. Xenophobia is the fear of strangers. There is something that's the opposite of that. It's called oikophobia, and it's true. It's a real condition, oikophobia, and it's fear of the familiar. It's disgust with the things that are known. It's a sense that I can't possibly be the kind of person who loves America because that's what all the idiot rubes and hicks and religious people and the gun nuts believe. How important do you think the Second Amendment is to the essential idea of America, and how much do you think the left hates this because they need to distance themselves to show themselves that they're more intelligent and more moral than they really are?
Bill, without the Second Amendment, there are no other amendments. Civilian disarmament is based on supposition that if you don't work for the government, you can't be trusted with a gun. Nothing could be more antithetical to America's founding or America's premise or promise. You know, there is a chronological bigotry that does lie at the very heart of the left and liberals. They don't like what's happened in the past. They think just because they happen to be living in 2017, ideas and feelings that come to them could never possibly have ever been considered before. They know everything a lot better than everyone else. And it's very sad. It's very unfortunate. Something like a support of the Second Amendment is considered antiquated, but I just think it's smart. I think it's patriotic. It's one of the reasons why I came to America. If you're not able to defend yourself, your property, or your family from people that want to do you harm, and you don't want to use an umbrella, the only country where you can be is the United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is the voice of my friend Nick Adams, one of the greatest Americans I know. And Nick isn't just talking about it. He's doing something. He started an organization called FLAG. That's the Foundation for Liberty and American Greatness. You can find all about the work they're doing and help him out and donate and all the rest of that at flagusa.org. Nick, thanks so much for being with us. It's a pleasure talking to you as always, buddy.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Bill.
We are almost out of time, but we can probably just sneak this in. You know, there's so much anti-American content out there that when I see something that's pro-American, makes me just sit up and go, oh my God. Kids are being told they can't fly the American flag at school. They're being told they have to take the American flag off of their cars, off of their T-shirts, off of their trucks. And then browsing around through YouTube the other day, I saw this video, and I would like to watch it with you, if we can pull that off technically, because this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It's a commercial, and that's all it is, but I just love it. So let's have a look at this ad from Fan Poll.
This is a fan, and this is a pole. But this ain't a fan pole. This is a fan pole. Introducing the only piece of equipment designed specifically to elevate your honor for the whole world to see. Fan pole lets you fly a full-size flag from the back of your rig, so there's no question where your allegiance lies. And we mean flags for all kinds of fans. Football fans, racing fans, fans of freedom, even synchronized swimming. But we know you're not a communist. No! We know you're a proud American, a lover of freedom. So we put a pole on a truck for you to hang sweet old democracy from. And we know you're a believer.
We know you're not a communist. We know you're a lover of freedom. Keep going, man.
How we built the fan pole. Two solid pieces of terrifying steel made to easily lock together. Combine that with the freedom to put any size flag you want. And top it off with a locking pin to secure that bad boy into receiver hitch. And you've got a patriotic mass that's sturdy enough to ramrod your musket.
Here comes my favorite part. Epic! Epic.
Is it legal?
He's not finished.
It should be illegal not to own one. Officer, this ain't the same as having those pretty pink fancy
California
flags
car
on your
here.
tiny Prius window. Window flags? Window flags? Whose side are you on anyway, son? George Washington.
Whose side are you on anyway,
Stop
son? I
embarrassing
think this is the
yourself,
greatest
your
ad I've
team,
seen in a long
and
time.
Most importantly, your country. Throw out that gift shop flag and get yourself a real man's flag for a real man's pole. And fly it high. Because on the road to victory, there's only room for real fans. And real fans fly real flags.
Ah, folks, that's what it sounds like. And you know, it's good humored, it's tongue-in-cheek a little bit, but he's not being ironic here. He's not commenting on America, he's not making fun of America. That ad is the best thing I've seen in a long time. And I can't speak for the NRA on this. This is just me personally, but Flagpole, you guys are absolutely awesome. And it makes me want to go out and buy a truck just so I can have one, especially here in Los Angeles, because I would put a big old American flag. I just drive up and down the freeway all day. That'll do it for Hot Mike on Wednesday. We will be back tomorrow as usual on NRA TV. I'm Bill Whittle. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.